All right, everyone, welcome back into another Fantasy Golf video. Going to be breaking down the Rocket Mortgage Classic here for you guys. I do want to get into a little bit of an update, though, that I made to the website. That's why I came out with the 9 to 5 write-up a little bit later, today instead of yesterday. That's because I was working on this kind of matchups-based tool that I'm about to show you guys here. And so I think this is low-key going to be kind of huge. It's a very good tool. You can sort it by round or tournament. So this is going to be matchup based betting. So we already have 3-ball bets that we can look at. Okay, that's great for round 1 and round 2. But lately we have noticed that we've been getting a lot of 2-player groups, which is fine. So this will be nice. This will be a good tool to use. There's kind of 2 ways to go about using it. So I do want to start with this. I already have it sorted by DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever. We'll toss in all the sports books as well. So I'm going to be covering this first. Then we'll get into some 3-ball bets as well. And then we'll get into some outrights and kind of everything that you guys, any question that you have as well. So do want to start with the matchup bets. So again, this is something that I just updated. So there's going to be 2 ways to go about using this. Number 1 is just going to be to compare the sportsbook edge against the current line odds that we have. And so I'll probably refine this tool a little bit more to make it probably easier for people to use. But what I mean by that is we see Ryan Fox versus Ricky Fowler. Okay. So the average odds that we have coming in on that from all the various sportsbooks, pulling in a bunch of different odds from different sportsbooks, they would have that closer to 51.2% likelihood for Ryan Fox to beat Ricky Fowler. This sportsbook, Caesar Sportsbook, is doing it a little bit differently. Okay, they have it set at about 48.8. And so there is a slight edge there that we are gaining. We are gaining an advantage on Caesar Sportsbook betting Ryan Fox to beat Ricky Fowler because they don't see it that way. So that can be huge. That is a plus bet that the average sportsbook line views as Ryan Fox winning that. Now, if you look at the 9 to 5 data, and I'll get into that in a second, it's a little bit different as well. And we'll get into that in just a second here, but that is important to note. Like that's a decent edge that we're getting. And so we could go down the list here, like Mingwoo Lee versus Akshay. So again, Bet Online there has that closer to about 52.4% likelihood, where you look at the average sportsbook line for him to win that matchup, it's 54.7 or so. Those small edges are going to add up. And so that's why I wanted to go ahead and update this tool for you guys, because that's going to be a pretty solid edge that we get there. And so I did want to call that out. And then we could do it by round as well. But I want to show you guys this. This is another way of kind of looking at it as well. You can sort it by edge. And so edge is going to be comparing, it's going to be comparing the 9 to 5 projections versus the line odds that are coming in versus the book odds that are coming in. So for instance, let's do this one. We got Adam Svensson here versus Ben Griffin. Okay. This is one where when we look at it, we're going to see that the average book's odds here for this line are giving Adam Svensson about a 58% chance to win. Whereas you look at the 9 to 5 data, it's a little bit tighter, right? It's more like a 50-50. Actually, it kind of likes Ben Griffin a little bit more there. And so that's the little stuff that's going to add up. And so that's a bet you guys can use if you want to. Obviously, Pinnacle, we're seeing a lot of good bets for Pinnacle, but you can also do that per round as well. So like round 1 bets, let's take a peek at that. We're sorting it by edge right now. And let's see if we have any FanDuel or DraftKings bets. I know those are 2 of the more popular ones. BetMGM we'll toss in there as well. So much more tight, right? These are the 2 most popular, but you could do Taylor Moore losing to Davis Thompson in round 1. That's actually a bet that I think is pretty good. And that'd be on FanDuel there. Okay, so FanDuel, again, looking at their odds, they're giving him about a 51% chance, whereas the 9 to 5 odds are giving him about a 49%. Okay, and also you look at the average sportsbook line as well, kind of agrees with that assessment. And so a better bet would be to bet on Davis Thompson to win that matchup. Continue on, you got McNeely versus Akshay. And man, I don't love that this one's popping up, but this is just for 1 round. Okay, so we're pulling in that showdown data that a lot of you guys are familiar with as well, just as an FY, and using that for this data. So that's what's really nice about the 9 to 5 data in general, is that it all works off of each other And so that's where we, see that sustained edge, whether it be showdown, betting, that's where that edge comes from. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's working off of each other, which is pretty nice. But yeah, so we got like 3 good bets that we could do. 2 on FanDuel, 1 on DraftKings. Okay, so I like those. Then again, you could do the exact opposite of that, where you're just comparing the average Vegas lines. And so we got some slight edges there as well. So McNeely, winner over Akshay. That's a good Vegas bet. Again, small edge there. The average Vegas line is about 51%, whereas DraftKings is giving this about a 49.5%. So a small edge there, but not bad. And so I did want to call that out. I think that can be kind of big there. Excited for that edge. And then so we can also look at, where is it? The 3-ball bets as well, which is going to be a decent edge that we were getting as well. And so let me change the text here to 3-ball bets. So I'll go to this slide real quick. Again, as always, if you guys have any questions, get those in. I'd be happy to answer those, whether it's DFS, whether it's betting, happy to answer those. But yeah, we'll get into those 3-ball bets as well real quick. And I'm starting with this because I know I forgot to do them the last couple of times here. So let's go ahead and jump into that. 3-ball bets. All right, so pretty straightforward here. Basically, anyone over 40%, I'm happy to bet on 3-ball bet-wise for round 1. Lee Hodges beating K.H. Lee and Nick Hardy. Happy to do that. Kevin Yu, a little bit hit or miss. We know his game, but he's a great stat fit this week. And so he's someone I don't mind getting to. Matt Wallace, one of my favorite plays this week, DFS-wise. Happy to get to him. Andrew Novak, Taylor Montgomery, all decent ones as well. I mean, this is Taylor Montgomery. That's probably the best one we're going to get. 3.4 are the odds, the best odds that we're getting. So that's a pretty good one. If you can find that, that's a good one to use. Really, the only one that might not be the best is going to be Andrew Novak, 1.9 to 1. Like we don't need to do that. All the other ones are pretty solid. Be happy to roll with those. And so we'll jump into kind of just the preview as well here in general. I know I'm kind of going all over the place here. But let's see here. Let's see. So we got this is an interesting question. So what 2 stat categories would you use to look at for possible plays? This is an interesting question here. So I don't know how deep of an answer you want, honestly. So the most important data point that anyone ever looks at is the most relevant data point in any model should be, or it is, the golfer's most recent start. That's the one that has the most predictability behind it. This is something that I've measured for 2 years doing this. There's not one answer here. And I don't know if you're asking like what key stats to be looking at. But yes, once you start looking at too many data points, that's when it kind of starts to be irrelevant. Each week, there's a few stats that stick out a little bit more than others, key stat wise, like which key stats led to golfers being successful at this event. And so what I did for 2 years is I looked at those stats. And so those stats would be how the tournament went. These golfers produced good results because they were efficient in these stats. Then I also compared that against the stats going into that event. And was there a correlation to that? So let's say we know birdie or better percentage is the key stat this week. Ball striking is the key stat this week. How we're able to determine that is by doing both of those things. All right. Was ball striking coming into this event a key stat, a key predictor? It was. Was ball striking a key predictor for golfers that were successful? It was. And so that's how you go about looking at key stats. But you don't want to ignore recent form. Recent form is important. When we're talking about recent form, though, and stat fit, those two go together. And so I do think people get caught up in that a little bit too much and looking at key stat data a little bit too much and recent form data when they do correlate together. Like if someone's not having good strokes gained total, they're not going to have good recent results. That goes hand in hand. Another thing that people don't pay attention to enough is course history. The most important thing when looking at course history is a golfer making a start at that course. That's the most important data point. And now the thing with course history here is that it falls off after year 5. Basically, after year 5, not useful for predictability. The most significant is the last year start. Then that drops about 5% for the previous year. And then year 3, about another 10. Year 4, about another 5. Then there's only like 5% left after year 5. And then going into year 5. And then after year 5, basically not relevant. So, and what I mean by that is you kind of measure golfers that were good going into that event, that had good course history, kind of what they look like play-wise. How did they finish? Golfers that had better course history tended to finish better, and you measure that by each year. So I think that makes sense. I know I'm getting a very detailed answer, but I like talking about this stuff. An interesting thing that a lot of people look at, and it's strange, is comp course history. This is something that I measured not 2 years worth. It was like 1 month worth. So it could just be a poor sample size. But in terms of relevance, the comp course history is about the same as looking at the course history from 3 years prior. So why not just look at course history? So I do feel like people fall into a little bit of a trap comp course history wise as well. And then I don't exactly love looking at the specialist data too much. And hopefully most of you guys know specialist data is looking at all the unique characteristics for that week's tournament, course designer, green size, rough length, rough amount, fairway amount, green speeds, all that random stuff. And I throw that into one data point because we already are kind of looking at that when we're looking at course history. But it is another avenue. A lot of people like to look at like green-based stats, and that's fine. But if we're going to do that, let's just do it right. Like look at all the stats. And so that's probably the least important. So let's see. We got some more comments in here as well. I'll get into that. So to answer your question, it's tough. It's tough. That's why on the 9-to-5 cheat sheet, that's why I have several different data points, coming in. So we got 4 key metrics that I like to look at. Some people do it a little bit differently, which is fine. But we got 4 key metrics: specialist, course history, stat fit, and recent form. None of those really trump another. I mean, course history, stat fit, recent form trump the specialist data. That's what's happening there for sure. But it's still not bad. We still can't ignore that. I would say if you're looking for predictability, honestly, just look at made cuts. Like focus on that. Golfers that are in good form are going to tend to stay in good form for the most part. Mark Hubbard has made 17 straight made cuts. A lot of people would not have guessed that. And he continues to do that. Adam Svensson continues to play good golf and reward people. Xander Schauffele, a lot of people said he couldn't win a major, yet he has now made 50 straight cuts. That's, if we had to choose one data point, without getting into too much detail, probably that. And then again, the most recent start is always typically the best one to look at data-wise. But it's so tough to explain because there's over 200 data points that we're looking at each week for each play that goes into it. But for a simple answer, yes, those 2 things. Made cuts and then the golfer's most recent start. But that's going to lead to a lot more or a lot higher variance when you're looking at the data, if that makes sense. Let's see here. What do you think of Kevin Tway this week? I actually don't mind Kevin Tway this week. Kevin Tway does casually pop this week. Actually, majorly pop. So he's 38th in the model. He's made 2 out of 3 cuts here, which is not bad. A top 15 place finish. He has been playing well as well. We've seen a top upside finish from him. Recent form-wise, pretty solid in the field. You're not going to beat that at that price tag. And that's the thing about this week. Sure, he's not the best stat fit. Doesn't have the best course history, but we can see him pop. That wouldn't be shocking to see Kevin Tway pop this week. So he's someone I'm going out of my way to target. When we look at data-wise, the worst data point that we have coming into it is recent form 7. And then prior to that, not terrible. So he hasn't been bad. Let's see. I had him in the write-up. Let's see, where did I have him at? I think it was just a lower exposure play, so someone I want to get a piece of still, but not going crazy with it. And my player pool is definitely opened up this week compared to normal weeks. So yes, that's what's happening here as well. How'd your week go last week? Last week was so that's basically what happened. Sundays have been bad. The Sundays have been so bad for my bankroll. Every single Saturday, besides the one GPP that I won, has been great. And I've mentioned this a few times, the GPP that I won this year was not, well, I've won a couple, but the main site GPP, those are the mini max, I should not have won that week. That was probably one of my worst expected wins heading into Sunday. Like everything had to come together for that one to win. Whereas there's been so many Sundays like last Sunday where players just are not coming through. Xander was the big difference maker, shooting even par. That was the difference maker for me last week. So been very annoying. I don't want to hear about Sundays. They've been super annoying. If you just flip that, such huge results, over the past several events. So that's been tilting, but yeah, it was definitely hit or miss last week. My mistake last week was going, and I kind of knew it. I mentioned this a bunch, was going to fair and balanced last week. We know the strategy, and I fell into the trap. I talked about this a bunch. With no cut events, we need to do studs and duds. If you want to be have profitable week, you need to do studs and duds. I did not do that enough. I fell into the trap, and Russell Henley and Corey Connors did not come through, even though they're great plays on paper. One of those two miss, and you're not going to do well because chances are a player that's 6K or so is going to make up the difference there, especially when you look at playing Scotty versus, for example, Xander, right? Xander ended up finishing top 20. Scotty wins. That's a big difference. So that was my mistake last week, and that was annoying. Thoughts on Bo Hosler? I don't think I'm playing any of Bo Hosler this week. Let me see. He is someone, whenever I get a question like this, I always like to think about it. And would I talk someone off of Bo Hosler if they're already playing him? Because, typically speaking, when we get a question like this, I'm getting asked it for a reason. There's a reason why someone's asking it. And so I'm assuming the reason you're asking that is because he's very good at scoring on par fives. That's a key stat that we need to be looking at, and a pretty good scorer in general. Top 40 in the field in birdie or better percentage. Has played this course a bunch. Not the best results, but not terrible. He's a little bit priced up. That's the concern compared to how he's projected to play, but not terrible. Does have a recent upside finish. He can score. Bo Hosler's not terrible, but also he would fall under the category of someone I wouldn't talk anyone out of, but not someone I would encourage anyone to play. He's not someone I ended up on. So I feel like that kind of answers it. So let's go ahead and jump on into Showdown. Let's get into round one Showdown. And then we'll pivot into more of the main slate as well. So yeah, we'll start with Showdown here. Kind of all over the place today, just because I did want to talk about the updates that I made there with the matchup bets. And so this data, again, is going to correlate decently well. This is going to be good for first round leader betting as well. And so looking at it, Tom Kim's going to be number one for Showdown rank. Now, do we want to be favoring the early tee times or not? Let's take a peek at kind of the PGA Tour weather here. I know this is interesting as well. So we'll get into this prop betting wise as well. Today it's supposed to rain. It might be raining there right now. That's going to really soften up the greens a little bit more. So the course might end up playing much easier even than expected. And so we look at the weather, no concerns there. So there shouldn't really be an AM, PM advantage at all. That being said, maybe the greens do dry up a little bit, in the afternoon as the morning plays a little bit softer. And so I still do think I will be putting a slight emphasis on the morning tee times. And for first round leader betting, I'm probably still just sticking with chasing those first round leader bets that have the early tee time. So the nice thing about it is the top three plays all have the early tee time for Showdown purposes. So we got Tom Kim, Alex Noren, Aaron Rai. Feel pretty good about that. You have Cameron Young there as well, and Davis Thompson. That's pretty solid. I feel pretty happy about that. Let's actually just take a peek at that. I might just keep it at that. Those four first round leader betting, I might just do that. I don't think that's a terrible option. So looking at it, Tom Kim, 33-1, FanDuel. We have noticed that we have been getting some pretty good odds FanDuel-wise on Tom Kim, like that. Alex Noren, 55-1. The issue with Alex Noren is that he is coming in and kind of bad results over his past three. 2 out of his last 3 starts, missed cuts. Prior to that, though, really good stuff. So it's what do we do with that? Can he find his game? Sure. 55-1 first round lead. Don't mind that. Aaron Rai. Yeah, what's going on there? 55-1. Feel pretty good about that. And then we got Cameron Young, 35 to 1 FanDuel. Don't mind that. Davis Thompson, 55 to 1. So we are getting Alex Noren, Aaron Wright, and Davis Thompson, 55 to 1. That is pretty good. Now, yes, we know that this event being an easy scoring event leads to it being a higher variance event. So can someone that's a long shot get the first round lead? They certainly can. But we are seeing the market kind of be shaped that way for first round lead. We're not getting too many crazy 100 to 1 first round leads, which I kind of thought we would given the field, but they're kind of smart about it as well. You know, if you wanted to chase a more long shot first round lead, Hubbard 80 to 1, that's probably it. But really just those top 4 that I mentioned, Kim, Noren, Rye, Cam Young. You could do Davis Thompson if you want, McNeely if you want. Don't mind those as well. So I feel pretty good about those as well. Let's jump into outright wise and just betting in general a little bit more. And then I'll jump into props. Okay. And then I'll jump into main slate stuff as well. So again, let me get the slide kind of queued up here. If you guys have any questions, again, get those in. Happy to answer them. So, all right. So I will admit I am probably doing more bets this week than I will any other week this whole year, and maybe even next year, because I don't think there's a clear and defined pick that we should be going with. There's several that we should be going with. And maybe you're someone that wants to jump on someone live a little bit more. That is an option that you can do. And that's an option that I'd be fine with. You know your strategy that you use betting. Stick to that. You know, like you don't have to do it just because I'm saying or someone else is saying something. You know, like you guys know your strategy. Stick to that strategy. All right. So I got the slide ready here. Let's go back to the write-up. And so you guys will see big list here of outrights. I also think these are going to be all good placement bets as well. And so that's part of it as well. So if you guys don't like these outright bets, don't use them. The one issue that I'm having with is Aaron Rye, who earlier on the week we were able to get at 40 to 1, right? That's pretty good. Now he's at 30 to 1 on most sites. He is still the top pick in the 9 to 5 model guys. So I still think at 30 to 1, like that is very good value that we are still getting there. And why is he popping that much? Good course history, good recent form, and really a pretty solid staff fit across the board as well. So like still at 30 to 1, a lot of people would be like, oh, that's ugly. Which, yes, it's not as good as what we had. At the same time, kind of who cares? You can get him at 35 to 1 on FanDuel still. Happy to do that. Points bet 35 to 1. Still happy to do that. And so, like, what is the appeal with Aaron Rye? Other than the fact that he golfs with 2 gloves. I'm just kidding about that. But I mean, he does, but obviously just joking about that. It's really across the board, just going to be a good play, right? Good finish here last year. Key stat wise, nothing concerning. We do need him to score a little bit more. Only 56 in the field and birdie or better percentage. That is a concern. But we look at it, we've seen some recent upside from him and really just solid finishes across the board. This is going to be a course that sets up really well for his game as opposed to some of those other courses that did not previously. So he's someone I'm happy to get to. And then, honestly, Noren Thompson, I am on the fence about. My issue with them, and this is kind of my way of getting exposure to them, is I don't exactly love them DFS-wise, especially Noren. Noren coming in off of 2 recent miscuts does have me a little bit worried. And at that price of 10.2, that does worry me a little bit too much. Now, prior to that, he had been playing some great golf. We had seen some outside from him, been a top 25 finisher. So I like that aspect of Alex Noren. I think he's someone like betting wise, we can bet to win. And that's kind of our way of getting exposure to him. And so if you guys are trying to chop that list down that I just posted, he could be one that you do. Maybe you don't bet him to have an outright. See what other bets we can do. Top 20, 1.5 to 1. That's not terrible. 35 to 1, though, still pretty good odds, right? Like, that's the thing that's nice about this week, and that's kind of why I'm opening it up a little bit more. A lot of the top golfers that we would naturally be betting on, we're getting at 30 to 1 odds, which, again, some people don't exactly like that this week. To me, that's encouraging. Yes, we typically would get these guys at 50 to 1, but I would rather just kind of spread it out a little bit at 30 to 1 than have a couple of golfers at like 15 to 1 that we're betting on. So he's like I'm definitely on the fence with, and then Davis Thompson as well. I think I would almost rather do a placement bet on him, like a top 10 finish at, let's see, FanDuel 3.6 to 1. Like that's probably more of where I'm leaning towards with him. But again, it won't be shocking to see him win. 35 to 1, decent odds. You know, he's someone that his game has been pretty sharp, but those are the first two that I'm like, yeah, I could see potentially not getting on those two. Let's see. We got some questions as well. Yeah, so that I mean, I feel like I just answered this question from Jamie. So any top 20 players that we should looking at, which could be dark horses, like those are probably like for top 20 bets, I think is what you're asking. I could be wrong. That's always the tough part about golf content. If anyone's wondering, it's there's two segments. There's DFS and then there's outright betting. It heavily correlates together. But at the same time, it is a little bit different, right? Where DFS, obviously, we're always looking for value. The best bang for our buck. And outright wise or betting wise, typically people are just focused on outrights. So I think I answered your question there, but if I didn't, just let me know. Yeah, so I wrote this up too. So Troy Money Merritt, if anyone's familiar with that nickname that I gave him several years ago, I mentioned that I might, if he has another good week here, might have to change him to Troy Midwest Merritt as the nickname, or even, I mean, if he has another good week here, Troy Merritt, we might just have to call him Troy Rocket Mortgage Merritt. It all sounds good. But yeah, I really like Troy Merritt. He's someone that I don't mind for a top 20 bet. I think Troy Merritt top 20 wise or top 10 wise is a very strong bet. And that might be answering Jamie's question earlier. I think that is a dark horse for a top 20, if that's kind of what you were asking as well. We're going to have a lot of values so that we could bet top 20. That's the thing about this week is that there's so many good values that might be the way to go. We know it's going to be a little bit hit or miss, right? A lot of the plays might look like good plays. They might struggle. But we have seen that this is a tournament where the plays that do pop that are playing well tend to finish at their expected results more frequently, if that makes sense. So there is a little bit more miscut variability here that comes into play. But in terms of golfers that were good plays that are on their A game, they tend to finish at their expected results more here than other tournaments. Here's another question as well. So, Bart, I'll get into this question in a few minutes here. And I'll do that segment next year. I'll get into the ownership. Not all right. I'll get into the ownership next, and then I'll do props last. Okay, because I do think that's a good question. Yeah, let's finish up kind of outrights as well here. So again, referring back to the write up here. So McNeely, these next ones I all feel really good about. Okay, even Wallace. Maybe Wallace is more of a placement bet, and Pat and Kazire definitely more of a placement bet. But I did want to include that in there, kind of specifically for this segment as well. Is there a chance that we can get a long shot bet to win? Yes, and I think that could be Kazire. But let's go through all these guys. So McNeely, he's kind of someone that when you look at some winners, there is a tendency where you see their form getting better and better. And that's what we're seeing with Maverick McNeely, right? 41st, 23rd, 17th, and 7th. So that's good stuff there. And he also does hold a top 10 finish here. Love to see that. Key stat wise, one of the best in the field. 11th in stat fit, really good in birdie better percentage, really good in par 5 scoring. Just a little bit sloppy, here and there, but he is someone that, again, we're getting on some sites at 30 to 1, I believe still. Let me just double check that. Okay, no, he's down to 28 to 1 on all sites. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but still not bad, right? From there, the one I probably most gung-ho about, Keith Mitchell. Keith Mitchell at 40 to 1 on Bet365 and Bovada. If you guys are some that plays there, that's a bet that I would encourage people to make. I never like to say I'm encouraging people to spend their money, I guess, if you will, just, kind of give them my advice on stuff. That is one where that's a big difference between 30 to 1 on DraftKings, 40 to 1 on those sites. That is a big difference. But looking at Keith Mitchell, he's the best staff in the field this week, which isn't new to Keith Mitchell. He's been someone that has been popping up stat fit wise a bunch already this year and really just popping up each and every week in terms of a good play. Really one recent bad finish. And when he's making the cut, basically all top 25 finishes, which we like. Key stat wise again. So key stat number 1, what we're looking at is par 5 scoring, 4th in the field, strokes gained approach, 3rd in the field, ball striking, 3rd in the field, and birdie or better percentage 2nd in the field. It will be a little bit of a letdown when Keith Mitchell does not win this week, but the one concern with him is that he doesn't have that course experience. Again, I talked about earlier on in this video that course experience does tend to matter, and maybe that's the slight difference, right? Just a little bit of weird nuance stuff there, but no, he's coming in as a very strong play. Really love the odds that we're getting there with him. And then let's jump into these other ones. Jaeger's just a great play across the board. He's very similar to that of actually Keith Mitchell. And so again, we're getting these guys that are really strong plays that we typically won't get odds on for. Like, look at Jaeger coming in second best in my model this week. That's a lot due to his strong course history. Really strong staff hit across the board. No real weaknesses in this game. 14th in the field there. Like, we love that. 3rd best specialist. Really strong form. Kind of a miscut mixed in there, but we've seen a victory out of him. And this kind of tells you just how bad the field is form-wise in terms of like reliability and stuff, but kind of okay with it. And so Jaeger, 28-1. Bet MGM. Pretty good bet. And then let's see here, a couple more. Again, I'm doing a lot of bets here. Let's get into Patton Kizzire. I don't think I need to touch on Tom Kim. You can get him at 12-1, 14-1. Don't mind that. So Patton Kizzire being 350-1 is kind of insane on FanDuel, especially when you compare it against William Hill that has him at 175-1, BetMGM at 200-1. And so that leads to kind of why I was looking at him like potentially outright wise, because we are getting an insane number on him there. If you want to bet him to finish top 10, you could. You're getting him at 20-1 on some sites. FanDuel, DraftKings, PointsBet, like that's not terrible as well. Now, chances are Patton Kizzire is not going to give us a good result, but when we look at his stat fit, he's really kind of popping up. And so I don't think we can truly ignore that. So looking at it, strokes gained approach, best in the field, 5th in birdie or better percentage as well. Needs to score on par 5s, needs to be maybe a little bit better in strokes gained approach, but at 30 or 350-1, who cares, right? Like, we're just chasing the upside. This is not really a DFS play per se, even though at 5.8 would be fine ending up on him in DFS as well. So he's a good value in terms of betting. Definitely risky. He's like a GPP only play, not someone you'd play in cash. That upside's a little bit tough to ignore, though. It really is. And I know it's a smaller sample size with Patton Kizzire coming in, and it's really just due to his last 4 starts that we've seen him. Didn't play well on the Korn Ferry Tour, and hadn't played well really prior to spring/summer. Don't like the result at the RBC Canadian Open either. You could potentially write that off, though, as one bad round. This is an easy scoring event. Let's just kind of remember that. And so he played well at Myrtle Beach. You could say the field here is definitely similar to that, right? The CJ Cup, T24, and then, T23 at the Corrales, which is also a similar kind of event. Do I think he's going to win outright? No, right? So if you want to bet him to top 10, you can. But again, that number was just eye-popping to me. And that's how they get you. I mean, honestly, I think they hang numbers out there like that to get us. And then just real quickly, Matt Wallace as well. So Matt Wallace is someone that I don't know if we can like really avoid this week. His numbers have come down betting wise. That's a little bit of a concern. DFS wise, though, yeah, someone we should be playing. Course history, 78th, don't love that. And then a 10th and 12th. So really good course history, really strong staff across the board. Look at the key metrics that we look at. 18th in course history, even with that 78th. 16th in recent form. Love that. Stat fit, top 20. Specialist, top 20. So overall, he's just a strong play across the board. Coming in with some pretty good form. Does score on par 5s. Is a good birdie or better maker as well. So he's someone I'm happy to get to. 65-1, still pretty good odds. He is someone that I did think we were going to get at like 80-1, 90-1. And that just didn't happen. So a little bit unfortunate there, but still a good bet. Again, I don't mind taking a stab on him to bet top 20, top 10, 5.5-1. Great odds there. So that kind of concludes the outright segment. Again, opening up a little bit more this week than I typically would suggest. That's just because we are getting a lot of good numbers on some projected good plays. So let's get back. We got some good kind of DFS talk. So let's talk about it. So talking about leverage here. So golf leverage, I will say, is a little bit different to other sports. So I'll show you the tool here real quick. That's kind of why I made this tool. So let me get that pulled up and get that ready as well. So the thing with golf ownership is sometimes it's correct, obviously, but a lot of times I don't want to say it's wrong, but you can gain an edge by just not playing these guys that are projected to be overowned. And a lot of the times they're players like Cameron Davis, like Phillips, like Toasty, where they're not that high owned anyways. So like fading them really at 5% doesn't really matter too much. Whereas like Akshay, I think this is a better way to go about looking at it. When you see Akshay at his price tag, he is definitely coming in a little bit overowned compared to how he's projected to play. You would be better off playing Jaeger at 16%, 17% than Akshay. That's probably going to be closer to 23% in some contests. So like that's kind of my way of looking at it. Is who can we be overweight on the field? Who can we be overweight on the field? And are there spots where we can gain some pretty good leverage? And so like Noren would be a decent option there. Again, coming in with poor form. Is there a big difference though between when Noren and Akshay are on their game? Not really. And so you could like gain leverage there. But this week I was a little bit surprised, at least ownership projection wise, as it sits right now, as I'm recording this video, pretty spread out as it sits right now. But in terms of leverage, I will say I am happy to get double the ownership of Mark Hubbard. He probably should be closer to 15% owned, just given how many cuts he's made, given the consistency and reliability that he's had. Now, I know his form has been falling off. Don't love that, but that's where we can gain an advantage this week. Cameron Young, I don't know if I see it that way, but he's someone we can gain some leverage on. And then Adam Svensson, like he should not be sub 10%. He's someone that has made the cut here twice, has been playing great golf. Like that's a good leverage spot. That's where I'd be fine getting to, 20%. And so, yes, the thing with golf is it's not like NFL or NBA. NFL, if a starting running back goes back or goes out and the backup running back's too cheap, you just have to almost play the running back. In NBA, we see that a lot where the starter will get ruled out or, something happens and a player's just too mispriced. You're just loading up on those plays because they are clearly too mispriced. That doesn't really happen in golf these days. And so the kind of general rules that people use for NFL and NBA don't really apply to golf. And so really it's when you can find good leverage spots, you should kind of use them. A lot of the times, unless it's Scotty, the ownership isn't completely warranted. And no one should ever be like too chalky, if that makes sense. Most of the time. Most of the time. Obviously, don't want to speak in absolutes. I hope that made sense. I hope that answer made sense. So my single entry strategy here, and this is a good question as well. So my single entry strategy is really depends on the week. Again, like last week, I kind of mentioned how a little bit of my mistake last week was we know to be doing studs and duds, and I just didn't do that. So it depends if you're asking like single entry double Fs, single entry GPPs. Really just depends on that. What I'm looking at this week is most I'm doing like a core of like 5 golfers. And I'm fine kind of entering that core into a bunch of different single entry contests, if that makes sense. And then 20 entry max, it's going to be the same process. You're just opening up a little bit more. So instead of having 4 players per build that you might be on or a core of 5, you're going to switch that up a little bit more. You're just going to open it up a little bit more. And again, every single week is different. It's like in a full tournament field event, that's where I'm most comfortable. Most weeks, though, there's typically one main build that I can make that I think is the best option, if that makes sense. And so that's typically what I go with. Is I'll go with that one main build, and then if I need to make a secondary build off of that, I will. And so that's my strategy for single entries. I really want to make one strong build that I think is the best. That gives me the best chance to be profitable. And again, with golf, it's a little bit different than NFL, NBA. That same like single entry cash contest that you're trying to do can be a good GPP lineup as well. I mean, there's a reason why it's your favorite lineup, right? So that's what I like to do. And then 20 entry max to get different. What I like to do is kind of just max enter that same build and then just make edits one at a time off of that, if that makes sense. Like change one player. Let's say, for example, let's say my lineups are starting with Tom Kim. We can change that then to Cameron Young or something like that. And then you just do those edits one at a time. Okay. Yeah. Single entry GPPs. So for single entry GPPs, you can be a little bit different. Like, for example, it really just depends on kind of what your goal is. Obviously, most people try and take down a GPP, right? But like, how frequently, right? I wouldn't mind a play like Patton Kizzire tossing into a single entry contest where he's not going to be high owned, or even Troy Merritt, where they're not going to be high owned, too high owned. And so that's a good way to get unique on someone where they can finish top 10. It's kind of a sneaky way to get unique. With single entry contests, again, with the ownership, it does get a little bit more concentrated in some spots. But what I noticed recently is that sometimes it's a little bit random in terms of who people are getting their ownerships concentrated on. And in a weird way, it's kind of been reversed. Like a lot of people will be like 50% owned on someone that's a GPP only play, and then I'll look at their single entry GPP ownership, and it's like half of the cash. I'm like, that shouldn't be the case, you know. And so I'm a little bit more open to single entry GPPs to do a risky play, just knowing that long term, if that one play hits, obviously that's what you're shooting for. So I don't mind that. That's typically not what I do, though. I like to do my one main build. That is going to be my cash build. That I'm also going to enter into some single entry GPPs. And I'll do some different lineup processes off of that, if that makes any sense. I think it did. All right. So let's go ahead now and kind of jump into the lineup process for this week, kind of what I'm looking at there. And it's not going to be too crazy. It really isn't. So let's see here. We'll get into this slide, switch it up a little bit. And so, yes, looking at it, guys, like main slate wise, I don't think we need to go too crazy. I'll probably have maybe 25% max exposure. And what I'm doing this week is I'm probably going to do gradual randomness, or we'll do this like 10% randomness because it is going to be more random. Yes, I want exposure to the top end plays that I'm going to be on. But I also, if I'm doing 150 lineups, it doesn't really matter. And so what I will do though, is I will adjust this to tell it I do want to be on some of my core plays a little bit more than 25%, which will be Aaron Rye, Keith Mitchell, McNeely. Now I will be getting to a lot more of Jaeger, probably 30% Jaeger as well. But I do want to see what this spits out. And it is going to take a little bit. And so looking at this, we do like, I really like the gradual or the randomness this week that we can set because we're getting our proper exposures then to kind of the full field. But again, let's see here. Aaron Rye, I want more exposure to him than that. Let me just see if that'll work. If I can change his max exposure to 35, it should. I might have to lock him into 35%. But again, I typically don't like to change the data that much. I like to have the data do what it's designed to do, which is spit out the best lineups. Now, this week, there are some golfers that are coming in with small sample sizes that we are going to have to adjust. But yeah, so like this is what I'm going to do. So 35% max exposure to Aaron Rye. Happy to do that. That's pretty strong. Do I have to do that? No. But am I going to be double the field? Yes. So that's kind of why I'm happy to do that as well. Jaeger will do 30%. McNeely will do 35%. And then Keith Mitchell, I'm happy to get to 35%. And then we'll do Davis Thompson. And Wallace. Yeah, we can maybe get Pendrith in there a little bit more. Maybe like 27 for Thompson, just a little bit more. Wallace as well. So Wallace is a play that I do want to be really overweight on. I think his upside is kind of we see it. He's just a clearly mispriced. Him and Keith Mitchell are the two kind of clearly mispriced plays this week in terms of, safe, should be safe, reliable plays at too cheap of a price tag. Now, are they going to produce? Again, this is a random week. And so that is why I'm setting a little bit of randomness to the lineup builder this week, because I want to prepare for that. And so basically after this, I'm going to jump into the props and then we'll be getting out of here. So yeah, I like this pretty well, what's doing here. Too much Chris Kirk. I think he's a GPP only play. Going to drop that down after this video is done to probably 15%. Same thing with Taylor Moore. Same thing with EVR. Same thing with Olison as well. Probably 15% for those guys. Adam Shank, maybe 10. Going to drop those guys down a little bit because I do want to get to this player pool. Probably we're getting a lot of good values, so I want to get some exposure to that. And maybe I'll jump into the 9-to-5 custom model and I might do that. I probably will do that. Some studs and duds builds as well. Maybe not even that. That's 50% is too much. I'll probably do like 40 studs and duds builds. That, again, you can do that on the 9-to-5 custom model. I've showed that a couple times on this. So let's go ahead now and jump on into some props. No problem here. I'm glad it helped. It's always, like I said, it's kind of tough these days in the golf space to answer some of the questions. All right, so props. All right, so definitely an interesting week when we look at it in terms of prop line difference. We're not getting, let me just refresh this, make sure we're good to go as well. Because I did push an update as well to this earlier on this week where it is updating about every 30 minutes now. So I just want to make sure. All right. So yes, no big prop line differences edges for prize picks. I don't like that. Either way. So I don't like that. Now I will say, when we look at edge, I don't know if I exactly like these ones. So because this is a higher scoring event, you do expect golfers to be able to score. Now the data really likes these, and I like explaining this, mostly because these guys do not have data going into it. So we're comparing them against the field, what a typical player would be able to produce in this field. And I don't mind Zach Johnson to get over 3.5 birdies or better. And I don't mind Kevin Kisner. I don't want to bet on I believe Miles Russell is the 16-year-old. I don't want to bet on that or Wesley Bryan or Jason Duffner. I'm just going to take those guys out of this sample. And here, we'll just drop this down. What is it? We'll just take all those guys off. So go with 60% will be the edge. That's the faster way to do that, or it should be. Oh. There we go. So from there, it's a little bit tighter, but I don't mind it. So we got Alex Noren to get over 9.5 fairways hit. Let's see. The tournament average is about 9.38. Player average about 8.63. So don't exactly love that. Not a massive edge, but at the same time, projected to get 9.56. Not terrible. Slight edge there, but again, prop line difference is where we typically are getting our bigger edges, prop betting wise, and we're not getting that. But I don't mind that. And then these other ones are kind of just correct. And that's kind of the thing I don't like about this week. Strokes wise, a lot of people love Akshay. I like him fine, but you got Davis Thompson, you got Keith Mitchell, you got Maverick McNeely. This is kind of the interesting thing. It's like I'm already getting my exposure to them DFS wise and betting wise in some capacity. Do I really want to bet them as well as strokes wise for props betting? That's kind of the issue. And I am fine with that. Like, those are bets I would make if I didn't already have exposure to them. And so it's kind of a long answer there. But I don't want to get overexposed to them, if that makes sense as well. And these matchup ones, don't like to do the birdie or better matchups. Those are a little bit more random. I do think the matchup bets that I showed earlier is kind of the better way to go. But you could use this as a kind of way of looking at it as well, in terms of like who to bet matchup wise. Let's jump into underdog. A lot of people are using underdog a little bit more. A lot of people in the space are have deals with them. So I know a lot of people prefer the underdog content a little bit more. If you guys are wondering what I'm doing when I'm scrolling down, if you guys are 9 to 5 members, there's a little thing you can zoom out. So if it doesn't fit your screen, that's what you can do. Again, we'll jump on into this. And so again, prop line difference wise, nothing huge. It's going to be the same stuff. We're sorted by edge. And again, we'll just take, I guess we don't have to. So yeah, I mentioned this on yesterday's live stream on the main 9 to 5 channel. I hate that Aaron Rye is popping up for over 1.5 bogeys or worse, because one of the best to have the first round lead, one of the best showdown plays, one of the best plays on the board in general. And so I don't like that this is popping up. Now, why is that popping up? The average bogeys made on this tournament in this tournament is about 2.2. And so when you compare him against the field as well, the field does bogey a lot as well, because this field is not that good in general. And that's why we're getting those values that I like. He does average about 1.7. So he's only projected to get 1.51. So it's not a big difference, but in comparison to the rest of the field, yeah, him to get 2 bogeys or worse, that is the best bet on the board. Again, I don't know if I exactly like that. From there, we do have Alex Noren over fairways hit. But again, I really wish we were getting some better bets in terms of prop line differences, and we're just not. Even on pick 6, I looked, no big differences there. So really the best bets I think we'd be going with this week are probably looking at like these fantasy points ones. Ben Griffin, you could bet under his fantasy points. Robert McIntyre under 5.5 birdies or better is probably the best one, because in compared to prize picks, it's at 5. That's probably the best bet we're getting on underdog. But again, all these plays that are popping up for under fantasy points, I don't exactly want to run out, because I'm kind of doing the opposite already, DFS wise. And so I don't like doing that. And so I did mention this on the write-up. This is a week in which I have most of my most exposure to in a long time. Like, it's definitely more than what I've done over the past 2 weeks combined in terms of how much I'm entering. So fingers are crossed that this is going to be a good week. I am going pretty heavy this week. And if you guys are ever curious what I mean by that, I kind of view each tournament a little bit differently in terms of bankroll management, which people don't want to like. If people stick to the same strategy, I have this X amount of dollars I'm spending each week. That's fine. You know, everyone has their own strategy that works. I like to break it down this week in terms of like predictability, in terms of how I want to attack it, and really in terms of how other people are viewing it. So I view this as kind of a week in which we know we're going to have lots of players miss, but if you get the right combination this week, you can have some good results DFS wise. And again, betting wise, I think there's a lot of good values out there as well. But that is pretty much going to do it here, guys. I do want to call out one thing that's going on the 9 to 5 website right now as well. So if anyone has, I'm phrasing this poorly. If you have never signed up for a 9 to 5 membership and you want to, I do have this sale that's going on currently on the website. It's going to be for new members only. Okay. So you can use the promo code SUMMER to get 50% off your 9 to 5 membership. I already priced it at too cheap, $10 a month. That's typically 70% off of most sites. In some cases, 90% off. You guys saw the content that you get for that. It's already premium there. You can get it now for $5 a month up until August 1st. So that's going to be going on for the summer. Again, that's going to be for new members only. That's going to be all for today's video. Appreciate you guys being here. Good luck this week with all your prop bets and DFS plays and showdown picks. Again, so much stuff to get into when it comes to fantasy golf, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure to give a like and subscribe. Appreciate it, everyone. Again, if you guys want access to the tools, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Available for just $10 a month. All right, thanks. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.